Hey guys, my name is Josiah. I'm really glad to be here with you today. Can you believe it's the end of 2018? I can't. That's crazy. Did you guys all have a nice Christmas? Yeah. Hopefully. Good. Happy New Year, pretty much. It's coming up. Not this Christmas season, but the one before, we took Asher, my 3-year-old son, to Zoo Lights. Asher's my illustration for everything, so just get used to it, I guess. But we took him to Zoo Lights, and we walked around. You ever been to Zoo Lights? You know, at the zoo, they have lights. That's about what it is. Anyway, we took him, and we walked around, and something surprising happened. We saw a light display, and it was Santa dancing to Uptown Funk, the Bruno Mars song. Do you know that one? Uptown Funk. Yep, that one. And Asher, that was it. He stared at it, and he watched the whole thing, and then it went away, and then he came back and watched it again. And then the next day, he said, "Can we watch Uptown Funk with Santa dancing?" And then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then literally for months, every day, "Can we watch Santa dancing? Santa dancing?" And then we knew that Asher was so captivated by this, not only because he kept asking for it, but then he started to ask for just Uptown Funk. And then he started to just dance to it himself. And then he started to wear this Santa costume that that his aunt and uncle gave him all the time. And he would dance to it, and we would listen to it. And then this year in preschool, when he filled out his happy birthday paperwork or whatever, he's going to talk about himself, to the answer of, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" A big Santa. Asher was captivated by Santa. I love that kid so much. Okay, what happened to Asher that fateful day at Zoo Lights? Asher was captivated by Santa. And because he reoriented his whole life around that vision of Santa. He started to change the way he acted, the way he behaved, the things he liked, the things he thought about, his vision for his future. He was captivated. What does this silly story tell us about every single one of us? We are all captivated people. We are captivated by a vision. We are captivated by a story. And we reorient our lives around that story, whether we know it or not. Right? Think about in America, in the West, these stories tend to be like individualistic, right? You might call them me stories. Okay, think about hi Essie, that's my daughter. She's so precious too. It might be like celebrities. We might have this vision of if I can rise to this amount of fame or this amount of money or this amount of skill, then everything will be well. This is like the vision that we set our lives on. Think about the old Gatorade commercial, "If I could be like Mike." You know what I mean? They're playing into this thing that all humans, we are captivated by a vision, and we change our life to accomplish that vision, right? Well, a lot of times, though, we don't think about it. We just do it. That's just the inclination of our heart. We set our mind on something. Like Asher doesn't know he's set on Santa. He's captivated by Santa. He just does it, right? It becomes second nature. But think about it. In our culture, it might be like having the perfect family. That might be the vision, the story that captivates us. And we reorient everything around in our lives to make the perfect family, or the next job, the next promotion. We reorient. We use all of our time and attention and dreams, and we live for that, right? You see what I mean? That your dream car, right? You reorient your life around it so that you can get that. It doesn't matter what it is. We all are captivated by something, and we reorient our lives around it. Why are you talking about all this, Josiah? Well, it's the new year. And oftentimes in the new year, it's a time to think about the next year. right? To look back on the past and say, what's the new year going to hold for me? What changes will I make? What type of person will I be? I saw an ad for New Year, New Me, right? It's all over, everywhere. We're supposed to become the person we are captivated by. We're supposed to become that vision we have for ourselves, right? The question is the story or vision we're captivated by, is it true? Is it true? By that I mean, if we get it, if we become like Mike, if we get the perfect family, if we get the dream car, if we get the new promotion, if we get enough money, will it work? Will it give us what we want? Will it give us what our heart longs for? Will it give us that peace and security and satisfaction that we need? And if not, then we've wasted our time, right? Deep down, every single one of us knows that these me stories, these smaller visions, these Santa-type stories, they don't work. We all know it. We've heard stories about celebrities that have risen to the top and then been disillusioned. We've heard stories about people that make $1 bajillion and it's never enough. We know it. But even if we're Christians, right? We oftentimes pursue the smaller story, the smaller me story, and it fails us. Can you relate with that? As we think about 2019, we need to think about what story is going to shape our year. What story are we going to reorient our lives around this year? And will it be worth it? If you have your Bibles, please open to Revelation 21. This morning, we're going to take a look at the true story. As Christians, we believe there is one story of humanity, and it's all about God. And it's the one story that we profess we believe as Christians, that will never fail. And my prayer this morning is that in a new and fresh way, we will be like Asher looking at Santa dancing to Uptown Funk, and we will be captivated by this story. And we will be enthralled, and this year would be a year characterized by reorienting our entire lives around this story. Caveat: I bit off more than I can chew this morning, and I picked a long passage. I don't know why I did it, and I apologize. But we are going to jump through this narrative, okay? So I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to do this text justice. The homework is you have to study this passage on your own this week, okay? You got to do it because I'm not going to give all the details, okay? There's a couple YouTube videos you can find. One's by D.A. Carson, one's by Tim Keller. They're great resources. You really should study that. It's a beautiful passage, but we're just going to jump right through it. This passage is going to show us 3 word pictures about this glorious vision, this end of humanity, where everything in this life is headed. And I pray that these 3 word pictures would captivate us. The 3 are a perfect world, a perfect humanity, and a perfect life. Let's take a look briefly at each one. It's so long that I'm just going to read it and make some comments, okay? This is it. All right, here we go. Revelation 21. We're jumping to the end of the Bible here. The first picture is a perfect world. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. Is the picture of Santa? Yes, it's gone. Okay, good. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." This is a picture of a world where everything is right, We have no idea what that's like. Where everything under the curse, everything, as it says in Romans 8, has been groaning and longing for its fruition, for its consummation, for its resurrection, is going to be right. And it's going to be perfect and glorious. And you know what the most perfect thing is? God's going to be with his bride forever, face to face. And he will himself, I think it's amazing that it says, wipe every tear, as if he, it's just incredible, that thought. Will wipe every tear. Death will be no more. Everything will be as it should be. You know, all those longings that we have, that wars would stop, that there wouldn't be hurricanes anymore and tsunamis, and that things wouldn't be bad. It's going to happen. It will be perfect. Verse 5, and he who was seated on the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. Also he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. There will be no need for faith anymore. No need for hoping. No need for waiting. Everything that God has purposed will be accomplished, and it will be set, and it will be perfect. To the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. In this passage, you see perfection after perfection after perfection, a perfect world in perfect union with God, and perfect life coming down, perfect relationship with God, and you see perfect judgment here at the end. God doesn't include this to be mean, this end part about judgment in hell. He doesn't include it just arbitrarily, there needs to be a hell. No, it's a statement of fact. It points you to the sobering choice that all humans have. It's a yes to God or it's a no to God. And I don't want to jump over this portion about hell because it's very sensitive, right? I mean, it's a very difficult topic. But the point of this part of the passage is that there is a choice. It's God's story or it's a me story. And God will not force us to choose his story. There's a famous C.S. Lewis quote in The Great Divorce. You've probably heard of it. But it says, on Judgment Day, there will be two kinds of people. One who says to God, thy will be done, and one to whom God says to them, thy will be done. The idea is God's not going to force people to choose his story, and if they want to choose their own small stories forever and ever apart from him, eventually he will say, yes, your will be done. Go ahead. And that separation from God is hell. This passage presents us with this choice that we have in 2019. Whose story are you going to believe in? Whose story will you choose, and which story will you allow to shape your life this year? And the passage pleads with you. Choose Jesus' story. The first word picture is of a perfect world where everything is right. The second is of a perfect humanity. Let's keep marching through this text, 21 verse 9. I won't read this whole last part, but the first part is important. Then came one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues and spoke to me saying, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, shiny as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. This next portion goes in to describe this city, and it's a cube, a huge cube, right? Like 12,000 stadia is like something like 1,400 miles. And it's shining and glorious. Let's just pause there for a second. When this word picture describes the new heaven and the new earth, it describes heaven coming down, and it describes heaven as God's bride, his people living in perfect connection with him. The only other reference to a cube in the Bible is the Holy of Holies in the Old Testament temple, right? Where God is said to dwell. Where a high priest could go in one time a year to offer sacrifices to God. And what comes down in the new heavens and the new earth? The Holy of Holies, where God will dwell with all of his people in unmediated connection and relationship for eternity in everlasting life and bliss. All of our sanctification, all of our struggles, all of our dealing with sin, all of our turmoil and pain and all of our toil, done. We will never have to ask forgiveness again. We will never have to have faith again or hope again. He will be there right in front of us. Life itself will be in communion with all those who are in Christ. We have no words to describe. Let's skip down to 22. And I saw no temple in the city, right? Because its temple is the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it, and its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night. The idea being night is the time of turmoil and difficulty and fear and attack. Everything is secure. Everything is perfect. Everything is set, and God himself is there. Verse 26, they will bring into it the glory and honor of the nations. Not only is there a perfect humanity redeemed by God, living in perfect communion with God, but the nations who for all of human history have opposed God, nations have risen up again and again and again, opposing God, using all their energy against God. No longer. Now all the nations will come to the New Jerusalem and use their efforts, their strengths, their glory for God. The only description that it can use is like radiant diamonds and glorious rubies, right? It's just shining. It's glorious. It's beyond words that every person in the new heavens and new earth will live perfectly as they were meant to live. Every single person, using all of their gifts, all of their abilities, all of their talents, bearing the divine image that was placed in each one of us perfectly forever and ever and ever, in perfect relationship with God, perfect relationship with each other, and perfect relationship with the earth. We've never seen anything like this. perfect humanity. The first picture, the first vision of this Jesus story, the end of human history where everything is going, is of a perfect world, a new creation, new heavens and new earth. And the second is of a perfect humanity. Everything is right. Everyone bearing the image of God perfectly, glorifying God forever and ever and ever. And the third picture is of perfect life. Let's take a look in chapter 22, verse 1. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, through the middle of the street of the city. Also on either side of the river, the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. The picture here is of the Garden of Eden. The picture here is of God's purpose from the beginning being accomplished. God created all things so that he might dwell with them. And here now, he is. Here now, the tree of life, this picture of abundance, always provision, this picture of the river, think of like Psalm 2, 1, where, blessed is the man who walks by this tree of water or whatever. I'm going to stop that thought. Anyway, think of perfect life. I should have just said that from the beginning. Think of perfect life. God, and it's perfect because it comes from God himself, who will sit on his throne right there. The climax of this whole passage is verse 4. They will see his face. We were made for God. Every single one of us has this deep longing that can only be fulfilled by him. And one day it will be fulfilled. We will see him in all of our longings for something more and bigger and better will be fulfilled as we commune with him. It will be perfect. Because our God is perfect. You see, the story and this vision of a perfect world, of a perfect humanity, of perfect life, is only perfect because of the God who's doing it. Because it's true. Because God, out of his love, created. He didn't have to. And when we said no to God, he came to rescue us. And he said, I will die in your place. I want you. I want you to be with me forever. And he is doing it. He died. He rose from the dead. He is the first fruits. And we all will rise with him if we are in Christ. And it will be glorious beyond measure. We have no idea. He is so good. So, that's the vision. That's the true story. That's where all of this is headed, right? That's what we believe. That's what we profess as Christians. The question becomes, back to December 30th, 2018 in Tucson, Arizona, what story will shape us this year? If you're like me, I want so badly to be shaped by Jesus' story. I really do. But if you're like me, almost every day I'm shaped by some me story. I'm shaped by some smaller, fake version of what is true and glorious. you know? Like, this year I want to get a new house, and I can't stop thinking about it. You know what I mean? And it's not that any of these other goals are bad, right? It's not like having a better health or having more money or having a better job. None of those things are bad. They're just not big enough. They're not big enough to satisfy. We need something more. So the question becomes, how? How do we become shaped by Jesus' story in 2019? And we've talked about so much, and I don't have all the answers, but I have 3 suggestions. And after you study this text this week, maybe you can talk about more. But the first, how can we be shaped by Jesus' story and not our me stories, our smaller stories? We need to be captivated by Jesus. We need to be captivated by this story that we read. We need to be captivated by what Jesus is doing. We need to have that Asher Santa moment in moments. It's not something we can just check off, right? Okay, captivated by Jesus, let's move on with my life. No, every day we need to think about it. If you are confused or doubt or question this story and its veracity, study it. Its claims are too great to pass over. It's not worth it just to say, oh, I'll just live my life and Jesus will be there someday. No. Jesus has claim on all of us and everything about us, and we need to be captivated by this story because it's the only one that counts. Read the Bible. When we read the Bible, we're not just checking something off our list to do each day. We are entering into the true story of all of human history. We are learning it, and we are becoming part of it. The second thing beyond being captivated by it is we need to receive salvation as a gift. There is nothing that we can do to merit this story. Right? We all say that and we believe it, but it is unfathomable that Jesus would choose me and you to be part of his adopted family, his bride that he wants to spend eternity with. It is only to be received by faith. And if you're here this morning and you've never chosen Jesus' story, I plead with you, choose it today. Say, Jesus, save me from my little stories and help me live for something greater and lasting. And if you've been a Christian your whole life, I think the call this morning is to sit in the ocean of God's grace. Every day we need to know, we need to have our lives reoriented and shaped around God's grace and let it seep into all these areas of our hearts that need it. All these areas of our hearts that are prone to smaller me stories. Right? When I'm confronted by just wanting a house to get this better life, I need God's grace to come in and say, there's more, Josiah. Let me show you. And we need to invite God's grace into those areas of our lives. The last thing I'll highlight in terms of how do we live into Jesus' story, how do we become shaped by it in 2019, is to allow Jesus' story to infuse our story with meaning. To allow Jesus' story to infuse our story with meaning. By that I mean, if this is true, and as Christians we believe that this is it, it means that Jesus is working all of this out, and he has chosen each one of us to become part of this story. Integral parts. That means for your work and school, we truly have an audience of the King every second of every day. If we say that the Spirit lives with us, then every spreadsheet we work on, then every client interaction we have, then every minute of study, then every time we're doing anything related to anything, God is there and he calls us to work hard for him. Not only do we have an audience, but he's called us to be part of his mission. He's doing something in your life, in your workplace, in your school, in your home, and he wants you to be a part of it. He's building his kingdom there. And he wants you to work for justice and truth and what is right wherever you are. And he promises in 1 Corinthians 15 that what is done for him will last on into eternity. That this kingdom that he's called us to build here now will one day become a reality. And it will be worth it. And in parenting, that's the stage of life that I'm at. We don't parent so that we can just make it through, right? We don't parent so that we can be proud of our kids. We parent divine image bearers, people that have been called for the glory of God for all of eternity. And our calling as parents is to shepherd them and to foster those gifts that they might use it for the maximum glory of God. It's a high calling. How about the location we live in, right? We live in Tucson. How do we live into Jesus' story here? If this is true, then Jesus has put you here for a purpose. If this is true, then your being in Tucson in Lifepoint Church is not a mistake. If this is true, then he has called you to build his kingdom here, in whatever your day finds you in. Everything you do matters to God because he has called us to be part of his story. That's it. That's all I've got. I encourage you to read this text again. And again, and again, and again, and again. And in 2019, to pray fervently that God would allow us, that God would allow Lifepoint Church to be part of his story, to have our whole lives shaped around his story and not our own. Would you pray with me?